The Ink and Paint Club podcast is intended for mature audiences only, so don't tell your parents! Listener discretion is advised.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Now this is podcasting.
Oh my god.
You're listening to the Ink and Paint Club podcast, your weekly home for animation reviews and discussions.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Ink and Paint Club podcast. My name is JD, and with me, as always, is the lovely Mr. Kyle.
Yo.
Hello. And joining us, also as always, is Mr. Matt.
Well, I don't know if it's been long enough for it to be as always, but I haven't missed one yet, so...
It has been as always for like the last month.
Yeah.
And it will forever into infinitum or whatever. I don't know. It's late. So I don't know if you guys know, but there's a new Star War coming out in a couple weeks.
A new Star War?
Yeah, just a war. It's not a series of wars, just a war.
What's it called?
It's the rise. No, somebody's rising. That's what I've heard. So someone's getting up or something. I don't know. But we're not talking about that today, because I'm not getting into discussions about how people feel about the new trilogy. We are rather talking about a good piece of Star Wars media. We're talking about Star Wars Clone Wars, and I mean Clone Wars, not the Clone Wars, the CG animated TV series that I do not have for the life of me the time to sit through like 7 seasons of a show for review.
Not in this economy.
Not in this economy, right? Rather, we are talking about the Genndy Tartakovsky animated Clone Wars series that aired back between the time of, when episode 2 and 3 were coming out, way back in yesteryear of 2003. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I do vaguely remember when this came out. I remember Cartoon Network was just hyping the hell out of this, like making sure you knew when to tune in, to know when you'd be catching these shorts during the commercial breaks, because like all of these shorts up until like the last season were all like between 3 and 5 minute long shorts. And it was a big deal back in the day, I remember. And sadly, it's not canon anymore, apparently. So.
Yeah, apparently Disney had that call. That's a bad call because it's very good.
Disney made a lot of things non-canon anymore, which I think is weird that this is not canon, but I guess the CG show is canon, which is dumb because they have the shittier Grievous. So
right, I knew you were going to get into that because you have more of a familiarity with the. Well, Kyle, did you ever watch Clone Wars when it came out? Because I didn't, and this is my first time watching it.
I care about Star Wars as much as I care about My Little Pony, which is very little.
Okay.
All right, good to know where we stand on that.
That's a fair comparison.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of... I would say I like Star Wars, I'll put it that way. I'm not a huge fan of Star Wars. I have watched all the movies. I've watched this. I watched most of Rebels. But, like, I'm not the kind of person that would, like, line up for a midnight release of a Star Wars movie. Like, I may wait a week or two to go watch it. I mean, I'll go watch it. But, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan.
Sure. Yeah,
I'm a fan of Genndy Tartakovsky and his amazing animation.
Yeah, that's the thing, too. Like, I would have loved to have seen this back when it aired in the day, but just because of how unorthodox it was, I never got around to actually seeing. Like, I might have seen like bits here and there, but I don't remember most of the stuff. I remember mostly back when I used to go like on 4chan a lot, like when I was younger. There was always the gif of one of the moments from like the last season of like the one trooper just like going hard ass motherfucker on like.
Okay, so I just want to say one of my favorite parts of this entire series is how little shit the clone troopers give about anything, because they just will like decimate anything they want and just go about their day.
That really is one of the best. I mean, I think that just shows in a lot of the sort of expanded universe stuff that like anything involving like any of the clone troopers and stuff is that I've heard personally, like as far as the games and like the books and everything is concerned, is that people seem to really like the clone troopers.
I don't know. I do like the concept of the clone troopers, and it's mostly because I kind of like for as many missteps as the prequel trilogy had. I did think having the concept of like, we're gonna have all of this stuff and iconography that would like eventually become the Empire. It was originally the good guys, and so you're seeing all these things that like will evolve into stormtroopers in the future. They're like these like good guy commandos just going around busting ass on bad guys.
So how come they're so good, but the stormtroopers can't fucking aim or anything?
Now that actually does have a legitimate answer, and even for my limited Star Wars knowledge, it's because the clone troopers are not the stormtroopers. They share like a lot of the same aesthetic, but I think the stormtroopers are just dudes that they train. It's kind of like you get hired on a retail job like during Christmas, and like you get the very limited amount of training, and then they throw you out there. That's what a stormtrooper is.
Stormtroopers are temps.
Yeah, I mean essentially.
Okay, so this is one of those retcons that the special editions of the old movies did. If I remember right, and Star Wars fans correct me if I'm wrong, when they did like an updated version, like after the prequel trilogies came out, they went back and like re-edited all the stormtrooper dialogue to be the same guy who voiced all the clone troopers. So it like made it seem like all the stormtroopers are just the leftover clone troopers.
I think I remember that.
I still subscribe that like the stormtroopers are just dudes. They're just like, we'll take anybody. We just need bodies. And even like in Force Awakens, they kind of like, that's pretty much what all the new stormtroopers are. They're just dudes.
Yeah, that's right. Cause Finn and yeah.
But I do love just like how the clone troopers are just characterized as like these just no nonsense, will just like blast the shit out of anything, kind of guys. And like the two examples that really stood out to me rewatching this is I love that there's the part where I think his name is Dirge, that weird giant bounty hunter with like, he's like the giant muscle monster.
The one that goes like full Akira.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think his name is Dirge. Like Obi-Wan is like joking to him, and he's like, I made a mess of things. And Clone Trooper's like, yes, sir.
Yeah, that was
and then,
that part did make me chuckle.
And then like towards the end, it's when they're trying to get the Chancellor out, and they're going down the elevator, and Grievous is just running down the side of the building after them. One of the clone troopers just literally leans down, pulls out a rocket launcher, and just shoots it out of the fucking elevator. Doesn't even think twice about it.
Yeah,
it's like the deadpan of that. Like, I know it's not supposed to be funny, but just like the fact he just pulls out a rocket launcher seemingly out of nowhere. Just the fucking shoot Grievous running down the side of a building made me laugh.
Yeah, the characterization is pretty good.
Another thing I kind of remember from watching this as a kid that, really kind of stands out now is like how much I think this was influenced by Genndy working on Samurai Jack.
Oh, totally.
Because if you ever watch Samurai Jack, it's relies a lot more on action rather than dialogue.
Well, the other thing too is that it relies a lot on inaction as well. There's like a lot of that same sort of like, it's very well, because we watched it like all in one go, I was mentioning that it feels weirdly paced for that, because these are originally in 3 to 5 minute chunks that you watch like once per day as they aired. So,
Right.
but I mean, like in the context of things, like if you put it up next to like an episode of Samurai Jack, where like there's just like a lot of like it gives you like moments to breathe and just sort of like take in what's happening, and just sort of, and that's the thing that's sorely missing from like a lot of like productions that happen nowadays. Like I really like Gendy's sort of directorial style. Like it very much like a Samurai Jack. It's very good.
Yeah, Genndy just has this ability to, like you said, it gives you a moment to breathe. It just like he allows his works to have a quiet moment every now and then. Like there's like I like how like in the first couple of, I think it might be even the first episode, is when like Obi-Wan is like leading the clone troopers, and like the troopers aren't saying anything to each other, they're just using hand signals, but the fact that like it is just environmental noise, and you know they're just doing action and without the need of to speak, and kind of like it's intense but also like quiet at the same time. I like that it's able to pull that off.
Yeah. And this is a thing that is not even strictly it's not just like a sort of action show. Like I haven't watched any of Primal yet, but I'm sure they probably utilize that a lot there too. And I didn't watch, I never checked out Symbionic Titan, but I'm sure it's there too. But even just going back and rewatching like Dexter's Lab and stuff, like just like the pacing is very similar in like how the comedy is done too. And even like the stuff that he did on Powerpuff Girls, like a lot of that influence is seen there too. Like that's not his show, but he worked on it. So yeah, there's like, you can tell, like there's just like, I've always really liked it. And yeah, like I said, I wish that there was more people that took that took that away from it as sort of like a thing to not necessarily imitate, because you know you wouldn't want to see it everywhere, but it would be nice to see it a little more often than you see it now.
Yeah,
everything is so fast paced and frenetic nowadays. Like, and I think that just is sort of like a representation of like, you know, well anyway, that's a whole nother discussion.
Well, yeah, I mean,
the death of action cartoons.
Yeah.
There isn't I mean, there's not a lot of action cartoons on anymore, and when they are, they're mostly on Netflix now. Things like She-Ra and Voltron when it ended. But yeah, I definitely agree that like the way Genndy directs his scenes is just so different from everybody else. Just, and like you said, the way he paces things, and wow, he just allows moments to happen without the need to just like be, just like you said, frenetic.
Like I would have loved to have seen him do a live action Star Wars. Like I feel like because Brad Bird was able to make that jump. Like he went from doing cartoons, he did like the 1 or 2 Mission Impossibles. I heard those are pretty good, but like I feel like they have these very good eyes for just like directing in general, not just specifically animation. Like
right.
I feel
I wonder if Genndy does have any interest in live action directing, because I think he's like pretty settled in animation.
He's he's really like settled in the animation. I mean like. Yeah, because I mean he's always got like projects he's trying to get off there. I mean, like hell, there was that freaking Popeye trailer that they put out that they never ended up picking up, which sucked because it looked great. And they ended up just having him do like more Hotel Transylvanias. Yeah,
and I really want to read his run on Luke Cage, because I know he did a couple issues of that. Yeah, a couple of years ago he did like a short run on Luke Cage. And I've always meant to check that out.
That's rad.
But Kyle, I know you're not the biggest Star Wars fan, but like, watching this probably for the first time, what was your take on it?
I don't know. I don't find it interesting in any sense. And usually I like action a lot, but just a bunch of lasers flying everywhere, explosions and all this stuff. It's just super fucking boring to me, because that's all it is. So
that's fair.
If anything, I'm more interested in seeing like the creature designs and all this kind of shit, because it's like, oh, episode 1, bunch of lasers and shit. Episode 2, oh, it's a space battle with lasers. Yeah, to me, seeing all this stuff constantly, it's just very boring. It doesn't matter how good it's directed. It could be the best fucking thing ever directed, but it's just not interesting to me in any shape or form. But
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I like his art style. I like you can see a lot of his designs has a line of action and certain things. There was a part where Anakin was riding a monster, and it was just like a straight line was used. It's kind of weird, but yeah, I don't know. I'm more interested in the nature aspect of his stuff.
Sure.
I could totally get where you're coming from. Because I was rewatching this earlier today. My wife Melanie, who unabashedly just loves Genndy and his work. She said she's never even watched the entirety because she doesn't give two shits about Star Wars. Even though it's like, this is completely Gendy's thing. He puts so much of his style and personality into this. Like, if like take out the Star Wars characters and replace them with just generic characters, I wouldn't have known the difference. Because this is so tonally different from any other Star Wars property I've ever seen up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say there are a few nitpicks that I do have with this. Especially my biggest one, I get why it's there. And it's towards the end where Anakin and Obi-Wan go to basically the planet with the Na'vi from Avatar.
Right. Yeah, I remember. At the time when Avatar is coming out, everyone was pointing towards that as like hey, these are this design's a little similar, isn't it?
Which is funny because this came out like 5 years earlier.
Yeah.
But
and the plot of Avatar came out like way before that. So
right,
like Fern Gully and Pocahontas and basically any other.
Is this the one with Chester Cheetah and his little trial?
Oh
yeah, because it's like, so from the standpoint I get it, is like to become like a fully realized Jedi Knight, Anakin has to go on like this quest or whatever. So I get why he does do the whole rescue mission of like rescuing the wolf people from the weird scientist people. But that just seemed like everything that was going on at the same time, where it's like they're off doing this quest and they keep flashing back to Coruscant, where like the droid army is just laying siege to this, and like the Jedi are just having their asses handed to them. It just seemed really inconsequential in the grand scheme, I guess. If that makes any sense.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, you think about all the sort of limitations that were put on them to sort of work with specific elements that had to, remain like in between like the movies and stuff.
Right. So that is kind of a weird thing about like back when this came out. I feel like you had to have watched this to understand a handful of things that happened in episode 3. This introduces us to General Grievous, and like, why is he walking around like he's an asthmatic? Is because, well, in the last episode of the animated series, Mace Windu crushed his chest. Or like, why is Anakin just now a Jedi Knight in the 3rd movie? You missed the entirety of him like becoming a Jedi Knight, but if you watch the series, you see him be knighted and have to go through his trials and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, it's weird having this extra series, and it's like, it's nice that it's there and it shows you some moments that filling in some blanks from the movies, but at the same time I feel like I wonder how many people actually watch this in order to not be confused when episode 3 came out. I
mean, Star Wars fanboys, they're absolutely gonna. That was probably what they were banking on. I'm
thinking more. Yeah, I definitely agree that the Star Wars fanboys, they definitely did. I'm thinking more of like, my parents who like, we'll go watch a Star Wars movie, but they're not going to read or watch any of the external material. I honestly wonder if they would be confused by some of the things in the movie that like are explained in this outside source.
I'm pretty sure normies don't give a shit.
That's probably about right.
Well, see, that's the thing too. Is I very much believe that the prequel trilogy was specifically, at least its intention, obviously got twisted around, but it was intended to be specifically for the fanboys, not really for the general public, because when you sort of look back at like the history of Star Wars before those prequels even happened, I mean, only the fanboys gave a shit about it. They weren't really like, I mean, like in the 90s, they were kind of getting, sort of their due, but as far as I can remember, it was mostly like anyone that still gave a shit about it around that time.
Yeah, because I remember like in the mid to late 90s, they did the special editions, and then they re-released the original movies back in the theaters. Because I remember my dad taking me to go see A New Hope in theaters, and it must have been the special edition that we went and watched. I don't remember like anything about what happened. I mean, at the time, I've seen A New Hope since then.
Yeah.
But yeah. It's also weird. I don't know if do we mention about it not being canon anymore on the show here?
At the very beginning.
Okay.
And I was going to bring that up too, is because if it's not canon, but the CG show is, then that must mean that they must touch upon some of this stuff in order to make it happen in episode 3.
It has to, because the final shot of this show is the opening shot to episode 3. That giant space battle above Coruscant is the opening shot to episode 3. So yeah, like I people who have watched Clone Wars, please tell me, I guess, how much of like this ties in directly, how much that show ties directly into episode 3. Because I think I remember them saying that like Disney Plus is bringing it back for another season. So it's like, how much are they trying to fill in between these two movies?
How much? Yeah. Cause how much do you really need to fill in between the two movies?
Well, I mean, I kind of like this era, like the Clone War era. I think it's an interesting time. But it's like you start introducing all of these characters that like are never brought up again in the movies, or never shown. Like the Ventress character, the Dooku's apprentice is never mentioned in the movies, as far as I'm aware.
She's in the CG show though, too.
She's in the CG show. I remember that much.
Yeah.
And like Dirge is only in this show, as far as I know. So it's like you introduce all these like really cool side characters, but like the movie just kind of, glosses over that. And it's like, well, there's all these like really cool adventures going along, but the general movie going populace is never going to see that.
They want to see political intrigue, no action.
Oh yeah,
just
because
politics.
That's what 9-year-old JD wanted to see is trade negotiations.
What I was thinking of watching this is if you ever seen the Simpsons episode where they go see Star Wars and it's just them in like court or something, just talking for hours. That's all I think about.
I mean, that's how episode 1 is, for sure. I feel like I'm in the kind of minority where I actually like, out of the 3 prequel movies, I like episode 2 the best. Only because I feel like it focused closer on the whole like Clone Wars and like the troopers and all that kind of stuff. I like that. I find that interesting. Which is yeah.
Oh, I'll go on.
No, I was finished.
Oh, I was gonna say this is kind of why I just don't give a shit, because it really does feel a lot like milking a franchise. Like this whole CG show has like 7 seasons, going on 8. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Milking is
something like that. Yeah.
Star Wars. You gotta milk that blue milk out of the Star Wars.
Yeah, but it's like how much is this part of original vision and how much part of this is just pretty much fan fiction at this point?
Well,
just doesn't matter to me at all.
I firmly believe that Star Wars is at its best when it's out of Lucas's hands. Like, dude had a good idea, but when left to his own devices, he went crazy.
Well, yeah, because I mean, he didn't even direct all of the original trilogy either. Just the
I
first
think he directed
movie.
the first one, and
Just
like,
the first one, and then the prequels, and then that was it. I don't know how much real input he had, like on the story. I mean, like as a whole for the original ones. Of course, for the prequels, he had like absolute say over it.
But I will honestly say that, like, for as middling as I am on this new trilogy of movies, I do think it's a marked improvement over the prequels, and I think it's honestly because they got different people to handle it. Yes, it has Disney's oversight, but you know, it doesn't have George Lucas is not like directly involved within these movies. I think he might consult a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too,
it's like they're just kind of running on their own with it.
Yeah, and it's just his specific directorial style too. It's just not. It's not visually interesting. It feels like watching a procedural, like a freaking like an NCIS or like a
a little bit.
Yeah, it's not a good fit for the world that he created, which is unfortunate. But you know, that's just that's showbiz.
Sometimes people could just do your own idea better. But yeah, I really like this show. Like, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but like I know enough about Star Wars to enjoy this show. I love Genndy's work. Like, I don't think Genndy's really made a thing I didn't like. And like the animation is really great. All the action is way more brutal than anything I've seen in a Star Wars movie. I like how it's so fast paced. I like that Mace Windu is basically a kung fu master.
Oh my god, that was some of the best bits. Actually, I forgot to bring that up. There was just him like he loses the saber and he's just like unleashing all these like flurries of palm strikes and shit to everyone. Like,
he's just like fucking kung fuing his way through a bunch of robots.
I think my single most favorite bit in this whole show was there's a bit where he uses the Force to like pop all of the nuts and screws out of a robot, and then he throws all the shrapnel at like a group of them, like tears them to shreds. Like, that was super cool.
Yeah, it like this show got real creative with like what you could do with the Force. Like, people are just throwing ships around and like picking pieces out of shit and throwing it at other shit. I like everyone just like throws their lightsaber all the time, throw it in somebody's chest, and then just calls it back. And it's like, where's all this like cool fighting in the movies? Like, no one ever does this. It's like, I don't know, it's like royal sword play in the movies. It's very like proper most of the time, but like in this show, it's like this went wild with like just anything they could do, they did.
I don't know that I'd call any of the lightsaber battles in the prequel trilogy like royal sword fighting. Have you seen the fighting in those movies? It's it's too choreographed. They're jumping around too much. If you compare it to like the original trilogy, for sure, it's got like that very sort of regal sword fighting feel to it, which is honestly what I feel works best for it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I do like how they approach it in the newer movies too. I feel like it's just a better fit.
Yeah. But yeah, I like this. I would recommend this to. I would recommend this to people if you haven't seen it. Obviously, if you're a Star Wars fan, you probably watched this a million times. Any casual people, I guess I could recommend it to. Like, I think Melanie wants to watch it just because it's Genndy's stuff, and kind of can't go wrong there.
Yeah, definitely recommended if you're an animation fan, if you're a Genndy fan, if you're a Star Wars fan, you've already seen it. Like, yeah.
If you've never watched a Star Wars thing, this might be really confusing. So I'd probably recommend this to people who at least have a cursory knowledge of what Star Wars is.
Which most people would, I think, with just how ingrained it is in popular culture. I mean, most people know the gist.
Yeah. Kyle, you got anything you want to say?
Star Wars.
Good job. All right, guys. Well, thank you all for listening, and I genuinely hope Rise of Skywalker is good because I know people like them.
It's got a lot rating on it.
Yeah, J.J. Abrams came back, man. We'll see how we all know how good J.J. Abrams is at ending things. We'll see how that all turns out.
I hadn't considered that. Oh.
All right, guys. Thanks for being here with me tonight, and everyone out there, thank you for listening. And we will catch you all again next week with a new show. So, take care, and we'll catch you later.
See ya.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Ink and Paint Club podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up with the show. Join our Discord to chat with us, and subscribe to our Patreon for some cool bonuses. Links are in the description. We'll see you next time.